I just read an awesome book by author Nick Connolly, and it's called Don't Give Up Just Yet. Talk about having persistence in a world of resistance. And want to share a quick story about this video. Actually, not this video that you're watching right now. The video that you're not watching is actually the story because I just recorded a video, and guess what? Despite everything looking good on the screen, there was no audio. And what Nick talks about in his book, Don't Give Up Just Yet, is about how when you meet resistance, it lets you know that you're on the right path. And he's actually speaking about it from a spiritual sense, which ties in exactly to what I'm talking about. See, my Alexa just went off. So I feel like there's a lot of resistance for me to get you this message, but we're going to persevere and get through it. What the message is that I wanted to share today is I know I've been talking a lot about confidence. That's what I do coaching on, that's what I do keynotes on. But I was inspired by a message that Pastor Davey Blackburn delivered when he was visiting our church this past week. And Davey has a book coming out. I recommend you get it. His story's extremely powerful. I'll just leave it at that. His name's Davey Blackburn. But what Davey said was that really resonated with me was he said, this is not about a book about Davey, is the hero of the tragedy and the trials and transitions that he went through. Davey is not the hero of that. The book was written to talk about how Jesus was the hero of that. And that's what I really wanted to talk about because all the stuff I teach on confidence, these are all tactics to help you elevate your confidence. But the bedrock root of the confidence that I now have, which was lacking through so much of my life, was being saved by Jesus. And if you're not into religion, if that's not your thing, stick with me. Because that was not always my story, especially after going through 8 years of Catholic school. When I graduated Catholic school, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with religion. I witnessed, was exposed to, just various atrocities and just, some of the worst, just the worst things that humans are capable of and saying. So I wanted nothing to do with religion when I graduated. So I didn't just, shrink away from going to church and only go on Easter's and Christmas. I didn't just not go to church. What I did was I took all this bitterness and anger and from the human experience of that and turned it into something ugly, something that really dovetailed with my lack of confidence. I turned that into bitterness and rage. And if you're familiar with the Bible, you might be familiar with the guy who wrote 3/4 of the New Testament, the Apostle Paul. Um, Paul wasn't always a follower of Jesus. In fact, much like me, Paul despised Jesus, so much so that Paul would sign the death warrants for people that followed Jesus. He would hunt them down and have them killed. Now, I didn't do anything as bad as having anybody killed, but what I would do when I found out anybody was religious was I would say to them, what, are you too weak to do life on your own? It didn't matter if they were Christian, Muslim, Jew, Jewish, like it didn't matter. I would scoff and think people were just so weak and you should be able to do life on your own and just had that, like I talked about, that lone wolf mentality that I had because I thought that made me superior to everybody. But in actuality, I was falling apart and lonely inside. But that was my story. That's how I operated for, probably 12 years. Uh, there was a pivotal moment in my life almost 15 years ago, in probably early summer of 2009. I was a somewhat new father, was really wrestling with that responsibility, didn't believe I'd be a good father, thought I would let my daughter down just for some reason. Um, so I carried a lot of anxiety with me around that. But then a few months after our first child was born, one of my best childhood friends, who I looked up to almost like an older brother, um, took his own life. in an intentional overdose. And when I lost him, it just threw me into this like this haze, this fog that I couldn't get out of. My coping strategies, which were not healthy, they weren't doing the trick anymore. um I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. I just felt like I was walking around in a perpetual fog all the time. Um, and one day before work, I was home alone and just was just having a really dark moment. And all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I hadn't prayed in well over a decade. This serenity prayer popped in to my head. You know, help me accept what is, let go of what was or that I can't change, and give me the wisdom to know the difference, what I can change and what I can't. And as soon as I finished saying that prayer, I just felt this warm sensation just wash over me from head to toe, like a physical sensation, like this warmth just flow over me. And me being this ever the skeptic and logical person, thought, okay, that's weird. I've either just lost my mind, like I've actually like cracked up psychologically, or maybe there's something to this God thing. And that moment I've come to realize was when I finally just was so broken that I allowed the Holy Spirit and Jesus and mercy to overcome me, that I had been keeping at bay for so long. I used to say that's where mercy found me. It's not. It's where I allowed mercy to wash over me. And mercy is what it is your due punishment. Like you have done something and you are due a punishment, but yet you're forgiven. That punishment is not levied upon you. And that moment was a pivotal moment because just as when the apostle Paul stopped hunting down the followers of Jesus and killing them and became a follower of Jesus himself, that's when he says the scales fell from his eyes. And much like him, that's when the scales fell from my eyes about how I was treating people and how I was showing up in the world. And that's when I started to do this 180 course correction in my life, was when, you know, the Holy Spirit kind of allowed me to see how I was showing up in the world. And it was not awesome. Like I was a jerk. I let all this bitterness and lack of confidence manifest itself in very ugly ways. But slowly my heart was softened and that mercy began to flow through me. And I was able to, start bestowing mercy on other people and just receiving that grace that was offered to me by, through Jesus's sacrifice. And grace is, you know, favor that you did not earn. I didn't do anything to receive that grace and that forgiveness that Jesus earned for me. And knowing that is what really created the bedrock of my confidence in who I am, that I'm not as influenced by title, position, money, accolades, people saying good job. Um, that is really the genesis of where my true confidence comes from. The other things I teach are ways to build upon that and ways to get started on that. But I just really wanted to share this message because Pastor Davey inspired me that I'm not the hero of my story by any means. Um, I was given mercy and received grace thanks to Jesus's death. So if you're someone who has wrestled with faith like I did, maybe you want nothing to do with it. Maybe you're of the opinion, how could a God that's supposed to be so good allow so much hurt and tragedy in the world? And you're absolutely right. Um, those are things that I would love to explain as best that I can, that I've come to learn. Or maybe you're someone who's even further along your faith journey and you want to reach out and just share your story. I'd love to hear it. It just like reading the Bible and have someone explain the Bible to me because I'm still deciphering it. Hearing other people's walks of faith, on those days where my confidence is shaken and the voice of the enemy gets loud, it does help to hear those things and have that connection and have that community. I'd love to hear from it. If you are just curious and have any other questions, I would love to hear from you about that. So going forward, like the new content that I'm coming out with, I'm actually really excited about. It's literally hot off the presses, and it is building on my inner saboteur work that I talked about these past few weeks. But this new stuff coming out, I based it on a declassified document from the CIA. Like, it doesn't get much cooler than that. So I'm just going to leave it at that to hopefully whet your appetite. But I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what resonated this with you. If you have questions, let me know. If you think it's totally bogus, let me know that too. Because like I said, I was there. I walk that walk of just wanting nothing to do with religion because I'd witnessed so much ugliness that humans had tacked on top of, the heart of God and on Jesus, which is just love at the end of the day. It's not judgmental. It's not using it to laud power over someone else. That's not what it's supposed to be. Has religion been used for that for the vast amount of human history? Absolutely. Um, so yeah, just reach out in summary. So just really wanted to touch on that, let you know that Jesus is the bedrock of my confidence is the punchline. And thank you, Pastor Davey, and thanks for Nick Connolly for his book that I just finished, talking about resistance. Otherwise I might have quit. But Nick talks about resistance, letting you know that the devil's scared. So I think the devil was scared to hear this message and did whatever he could, whether it was my Alexa going off or the microphone not working before or the lawn guy showing up and having my dog freak out and delaying this. But yet here we are. So onward and upward, everybody. Take care.